Hello, friends.
Hello.
Oh,
Chris, Saf, hello,
whoa.
guys.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone who's joining us. I see Rachel's here. Carl is here. Let's go through places. Carl's in Pennsylvania. Martin's in the UK. Suzanne's in Montana. Sylvie in Rotterdam. Eva in Ontario. Mahela in Romania. Julie
Yeah.
in Salt Lake City. Love and Life in New Jersey. Hello, New Jersey. Okay, Rachel's in Arkansas. Pokey's in the Netherlands. Sharon's in Colorado. Wow. Patricia's in Ohio. Dewey's in Alabama. You guys remember the old gathering of friends we used to do where someone in the back of the room would like call out all the places?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. It's great.
Dewey's in Alabama. Raymond from Kentucky. Diaz in New York City. Tyrants. Hello, Tyrants. Sonia in Norway. Wow, incredible, everybody. Victor, the Netherlands. Julie in Colorado. Oh my gosh. Avail from Guyana. Jeff from Michigan. Haroon from Nigeria. Jean from California. Unbelievable. Rosemary from Florida. Okay, Michelle's from Southern California. They keep coming in. Incredible. So we're connected here in the whole world. Let's make this hour that we have together a prayer. We see what happens every time the wisdom of Kabbalah reveals like this, especially in our times, how this is a unique group, always represented from people from all of humanity. That's how Kabbalah began. That's how it's now in the last generation revealing itself again. And we're not waiting. Some military, some politician, someone else is going to do something. Let's now, in this hour that we have together, representing. Look at us here. Look in that chat. How we're spanning the whole earth. Let's use this as our prayer. Let's all aim ourselves, all aim our common hearts, regardless of where we're from, regardless of what our political affiliations are. Let's all aim our common hearts into something that's bigger than all of us. We live on a planet that has trillions of dollars, plenty of dollars to get anything that we need. 70% of this planet is covered in water. There's air, there's land, there's everything we possibly need. There's every raw material exists in this system, and this system knows how to combine all the materials and use them correctly. But in between those raw materials and the good use of them, we humans are injecting ourselves in many places along the way, extracting things for ourselves and causing this system to collapse. uh, the deadliest war of the 21st century, which ended maybe last year in Ethiopia, 600,000 people died. I think in the
Wow.
last year of that war, yeah, I think the last year of that war in Ethiopia, 100,000 people died. So I would probably bet that most people here didn't even know there was a war in Ethiopia and had no idea that over 500,000 people died in that war. The Second Congo War, which happened in the lifetime of everybody who's tuned in with us here, uh, almost 500,000 people died in the Second Congo War. Have it in our life. I'm sure most people here never heard of it, can't comprehend. I mean, imagine how many people were in your school when you grew up. Okay, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand, maybe. Try to imagine what 600,000 people is. In Syria, civil war going on in Syria, over 300,000 people have died there. Forget about the millions of people who have been displaced. And where's the protests, the news stories? Does anyone see anybody in the streets? Does anyone see any news stories over it? So we're over 1 million people dying in wars already that nobody ever heard of, or most people never heard of. In Darfur, 300,000, and the Ukraine-Russia war that's going on right now. So almost 100,000 from each side who died. I think some more Russians died than Ukrainians at this point. So what kind of life is this, everybody? Let's think about what is going on here. Let's try and go outside of ourselves a little bit and try and understand what kind of life we're living, right? Like, do we even think about it, much about outside of ourselves? And if God is love, right, like everybody says, well, then what's going on? Does God want the Russians to win, or does God want the Ukrainians to win? Right? When the
Yeah.
is is Allah. Either in Gaza they're praying to Allah, and in Israel they're praying to Hashem. Like, which one is the real God? And whatever this God is that's controlling the world, and whoever this God is that's bigger than everything. So if one side kills people from the other side, are they doing it for God? Is that what God wants? They're winning the war for God. They're making God happy. They're protecting God. Um, when people are fighting the other, so what kind of life is it that we it's maybe like 1.5 million people we talked about there, that 1.5 million people were shot, bombed, starved, crushed, and it barely disrupts our life, our job, our plans. So, I mean, maybe that, when I feel a headache, maybe the headache isn't that. Maybe my headache, when I get a headache, is because of the war in Africa, like in Darfur or something, or because of Syria. But maybe the system is all connected, and I am actually feeling all the things that are going on in the world around me. I just don't recognize it.
Well, first of all, those numbers are pretty, when you hear numbers like that, like over a million, just that itself, it just, you immediately think like, why, I don't know, that's the typical questions. Why them? Was it necessary? Nature is cruel. You don't really think, first of all, you said God. Hopefully we can define that, pretty soon. But you said it in a way it's like, we really are torn over, a few hundred, even one or two people that we know that are close to us that die. But numbers like that make it seem like there's really no calculation with bodies as far as nature is concerned.
Yeah, this is definitely when you try to conceive of such a number of people and you think, wow, and every such person is a person, like a whole world, and like who has a family and people who care about him or her, and that's it's hard to conceive. It's really hard to get to grips with that kind of number. And then on the other hand, like Chris says, it's also, does that number even mean anything in the grand scheme of things? If it's such a, it's a not an easy question, an issue.
So
Yeah.
last week, we were doing our show. We're here every week at 2 p.m. Eastern, regardless of time changes or whatever. 2 p.m. Eastern. We're here and we're talking about what's going on in the world through the lens of the wisdom of Kabbalah. Three friends having an informal conversation about serious topics, and we're getting towards the end of the show, and all of a sudden we hear
Yeah.
sirens. We hear sirens, and then the Sop's like, "I'm out." You go grab kids, grab your wife, and head down into. You have nine. What do you have?
Yeah.
90 seconds when that happens.
Yeah, which is a lot, by the way. The people who live
90 seconds is a
in
lot.
other places, it's maybe 30 seconds. In other places, in some places, it's 10 seconds even. It
So
depends on
that
where you
means
are.
that they
Yeah.
that a bomb has
They're
been
closer.
detected and it's going to detonate in 90 seconds, and you need to get
Yeah.
get to shelter.
Try to
Okay.
get to a
So
safe
this is
place.
how
Yeah.
our show this is how the show ended last week. We were sitting like this talking, and we heard sirens, and you threw off the headphones and went to shelter. We spoke to you after that. Of course, you're here. Everything was okay, but that's strange. If you're in the
Very
middle of a
strange. Very
war,
strange. Very strange.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the obviously, as I said, even here in Israel, there are people who are experiencing much more stressful situations, and in general, you just gave examples of horrible horrible things happening to hundreds of thousands of people. But there's a very interesting situation. I mean, mode that you get into when your life is like, we're trying to have a normal kind of life here, and then you have like these sirens, right? It's very strange. It's
You're
very
you're in Israel.
strange.
If someone's
Yeah,
new here or watching and don't know, so you're in Israel.
yeah.
Okay, it's just
So it's very
clarify.
strange um, I mean, to like you stop your life, go for like 10 minutes. You're in like some sort of a Russian roulette kind of a situation. You like hope that it doesn't fall on you, basically. And then you go back to your life to try to keep doing what you've done before, and that's the weird thing. And when you start doing that a couple times a day, like you do this to 2 or 3 times a day, let's say, and it's a very strange situation. I gotta say, it's a very strange situation, because every time it's like whatever it is you've done in a minute ago might have, you get perspective on it all of a sudden in the face of like a life and death situation. You're like, this whatever it is I was doing may not matter that much, actually. Whoever I was, angry about, or stressed about or busy with, but then you finish that, you get out of this safe place, and you try to continue your life. Very strange. Again, as I said, people across the board in a war situation like this have all kinds of situations. Obviously, there are people also in combat right now. Their life is a completely different situation. But going back and forth, like from my perspective, and people who are like more or less in my situation, it gets you thinking about the. There's no doubt it gets you to quickly remind you to contemplate the meaning and purpose of whatever it is you're doing, before you hope to get back to it. It's
That's really weird
anyway,
about,
yeah,
you could have like a
weird,
stressful day at
yeah,
work. You could
yeah,
have problems, at your house with your family. None of those pressures really bring you to the thought and like contemplating your existence.
yeah,
It's like a special magical key. It's a special magical, like a reset button that, we have to usually get a paper clip and you have to go through that little device. And in order to press the reset button, you have to like have something really thin and precise and small. Then you can get into that device. I don't know, like a little keyboard, a little controller, whatever you press, and you press the reset button and it resets the thing. There's something about being in a situation of war, or just life or death situation at all, what that causes you to think way differently, even if it is just for
yeah,
10 minutes. Like you said, you're just going in there for 10 minutes and you're thinking, whoa, what I did even 10 minutes ago, all of a sudden I need to kind
yeah,
of rethink the importance of those things. And it's almost gives it almost, if there is a benefit to war at all, if you could even say that there's such a thing, where is the benefit? Probably in the fact that we're at those times, there's some kind of reevaluation of values and
yeah.
yeah, and how you carry
Absolutely.
about
All
life.
all of life, yeah, you get to see it from a new perspective, from a new light. Yeah, yeah. There's no
So
doubt.
where are we going from
Uh,
here?
where
Yeah,
That
well
was
yeah.
crazy.
where I'll
That
tell you where I'm going from here. I mean, maybe
well,
I could
well, yeah.
I could share with the viewers, but I mean, let's not get into any details. I also don't know all the details, but as of tomorrow, most likely I'll be drafted to the army, because I live here and I'm part of this country, and I got called today, and so that's what I'm going to do. Um, and obviously, my main challenge from a spiritual perspective is to stay connected to the goal of creation and to the inner work that we do as Kabbalists, um, connecting, linking, relating every state in life, every moment, to where it's coming from and where it's going, and trying to be a conduit for the ultimate goal of creation, which is a good one, which is one of ultimate peace, beyond wars, beyond conflict. That's what we all wish to bring to the world as Kabbalists. And so, even when I'm going to be there, I'm gonna try to keep my heart set on that. So
This kind of squeezes stuff.
yeah.
Like what Chris was saying, that, I was really pissed off that you were supposed to bring home, you said you were going to get toothpaste. We're out of toothpaste. We didn't have toothpaste. But then, something like this happens and it like
Yeah.
puts everything in perspective, right? Like you
Yeah.
said you were going to do the dishes. Like I did it 5 times. I'm taking care of the kid. You promised you were going to do the dishes, but then now you're talking about like being called up to serve again, and uh, the you just kind of like froze us all as you're saying it, and you realize like when you're talking about having this intention during that, like that everything that's happening is coming from, well, you described it beautifully, this inner process. And the Kabbalists are really, it could sound naive if you're outside of it, and that's what I want to tackle here, because
Yeah.
when you are in war, it's a good time to pray,
Hmm.
right? Um, and the Kabbalists are real clear. I have a quote here from Maor Shemesh. She says the primary shield against all calamity is love and unity.
Great.
So,
Maor Shemesh was a great Kabbalist for those who may not be familiar. Yeah.
so in short, like you described the whole method of Kabbalah, everyone needs to just be a simple worker, even if you're in the army or whatever you're doing, whatever your job. I don't mean simple worker meaning like you're not like a brain surgeon. If you're a brain surgeon, just simply be a brain surgeon. But
Yeah.
whatever your thing is, just simply do your thing. But while you do your thing, connect it to God. And then everybody is just doing their thing, and everyone is connecting their thing to God, and then God fills all of that work with his spirit, and then
Wait, that's
everything is
assuming that
okay.
everyone has the same God. Here, that's the title of the show. Who's God? Because they think there's one God, and there's another people think there's another God, and my neighbor has another God, right? So if we're all gonna
Yeah.
work for the same God, the same goal, really, you could just replace that for that word could be
Right.
synonymous. What's the same goal, right? So their goal has to be the same as my. So how do you define? This is really the whole problem. And if you look at it, and if not, then you just take a look at the thumbnail. Is that where we're going? That's really the question,
Well, if
right?
everyone fights for their God, then we may end up with mushroom clouds, I guess.
Hmm.
So who's
Yeah.
God? Who's
What
God
what
now?
is what is good? I would say I mean, what, where, when, what does he or she or it want? We need to open all of it up. I mean, uh, thankfully, you know, Baal HaSulam, great Kabbalist, has worked a lot in his articles to really try to bring it down. Um, and I do have some quotes that I was looking at in preparation for our discussion, but maybe let's not start there because I mean, let me the I was thinking about the like what's I have to go to join the army now. That's basically
I
what
imagine
I
that's on your
what I,
mind.
it's on my mind completely. So I'm because a few hours ago I realized I even have to like figure out what I can bring with me. It's a whole thing in itself. In any case,
What does one pack for the
um,
army? Like a phone charger, underwear, like what else do
the
you bring?
basically as little as possible. But yeah, let's not get into those details now. The
Okay.
Anyway, um, here's what I'm how I thought about going about this. So I mean, the army, even like right now, there's a war in Gaza, right? There's hundreds altogether across the country. Here, there's a few hundreds of thousands of soldiers that are positioned in certain places, and they have certain vehicles and weapons and so forth, and different tasks and different goals that they need to accomplish from a military perspective and so forth. And all those soldiers are grouped. There's a commander on top of every so and so soldiers, and then all those commanders are also grouped and there's like one commander that's on top of them, and then ultimately there's one chief of the military, and through that person, essentially, all of this machine ultimately moves. And if you look at least the situation in Israel, there's altogether like three people there's like a bigger kind of forum, and then there's a small forum, which is just three people basically, like the prime minister, the minister of defense, and the chief of the army, that are basically conducting everything that's happening in the country right now. So that's like millions of people, and everything they do, whether the kids go to school or not, and where the safe places are, and the army, of course, and diplomacy and everything, all of that now runs through, like, ultimately, like these three people. Why am I saying that? Just as an example. Now this is just how all of, like, ultimately, many people, few million people here in Israel are now like governed by this cabinet, by this small team, right? Now, if you zoom, so there's a war in the Middle East here, but if you zoom out, then all of a sudden you see, wait a minute, it's not just here in the Middle East, because the U.S. is, as we know, is backing Israel and sending military aid, and what was it, like a ship, like a warfare ships and things like that. But the U.S. is actually bothered by Iran, for instance, who wants to dominate the region, they say, but Iran is using all kinds of other proxies, like the Houthis in Yemen, that are now threatening with their missiles. And then Russia, at the same time, while all of this is happening, is apparently strengthening its ties with Iran and with Hamas and with China. And China too also has a certain kind of policy towards this kind of war. And even North Korea, which is, if all the countries and all the leaders are like kids in the neighborhood, like kind of like some play for this team, some play for this team, and some, like, North Korea is like, I'm not even playing, But now when something happens in the Middle East, even North Korea goes, what is it, like Gaza, Israel, blame Israel, and then I going back to my own thing, kind of thing, even that, like, so what I'm trying to show is, it's not really a war happening in one place. There is like a gigantic global chessboard that everyone is now, all the pawns are now making a move. Everyone is making a move. The whole world is like moving in relationship to something that seemingly happens in a very small place, super small place on the face of the earth. But no. And you see, it's not just this small place. Surrounding this very small point, the entire world is like moving. It's like what's the name how do you call in English the name of this children? There's a kindergarten game where you, like, sit on the chairs, and then there's music, and everyone tries to find musical chairs, right? Musical chairs. Thank you. So it's like a game. It's like a global game of musical chairs. And so why did I go there? We asked, who's God? What is God? From a Kabbalistic point of view, God is the very system of laws, the laws of nature, that govern ultimately this entire movement. So we look at the news, or we focus on a specific area on this map, and we say, Israel wants this, Hamas wants this, they are to blame. You zoom out, you see that more countries are involved. You zoom out, you see the entire world is involved. You zoom out, you see that the whole planet is moving, and it's like all of humanity is in a kettle or a pot, and nature is stirring the stew or whatever it is that it's cooking. But all of us are being cooked. No one is really, if you understand that everything's moving, that every leader, every country, every piece of humanity is affected by this and has to do something, voice its position, do something with its army, do something diplomatically. But everyone is doing something. right? Everyone's moving in relationship. You understand that we are like cogwheels. This is Baal HaSulam's example. Humanity is like cogwheels in a machine. If any cog moves, it means all the rest of the cogwheels are also moving because they're all interlocked. They're all interdependent. So who's moving? Who's choosing how to move? If
Just think, if we're just to make it simple for a person, you
Yeah.
think, for example, you get hungry and you go to get, so you don't have control of, right? So you just go to eat. It's not a lot of calculations. You're hungry, you go to eat. But because you need to eat and you're going to make eggs and bread. So now imagine that there was a farm somewhere that had to produce the eggs, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a truck that had to bring the eggs to the store, and there was someone who had to build the store and be in the store, and the
Mm-hmm.
bread had to come from a farm and the wheat, and you can just keep go, and then the farm equipment that built for the farm, and so just you going to eat and you had no control over it. You just got hungry and you just got up and ate with no thought. Like there's thousands of people who participated in making that happen. So you're talking about the war, but I just want to clarify the example of all of
Yeah.
us being cogwheels. And let's also say something else, because you hit on something. You slipped and you said nature is stirring the pot. You
Mm-hmm.
said it's God. You said, okay, you got Russia over there, you got China over here, you got North
Right.
Korea, you got you this. And you
Yeah.
said and nature is stirring the pot. But I thought we were talking about what is God,
Right.
and then right.
So
So clarify.
obviously, from a Kabbalah's point of view, it's exactly the same thing, and this may be a good moment to get a quote on this. Can you see this? No, you can't. Well, give me a second. Can you see this now? Here's a quote from Baal HaSulam, the great Kabbalist of the previous century. This is what he writes in his article. For those who don't know, this is what he writes in his article called The Peace. So he wrote an article with the goal of explaining how and if at all can peace be possible. And it's a long article. We can't obviously, delve into all of it right now, but we could talk about some main points. And one of the big points that he makes on his way to explaining how peace will ever be possible is that um, nature and God, from a Kabbalistic point of view, is exactly the same thing. Let's read it. It says nature. This obviously the original text is in Hebrew. This is a translation. Nature, hateva, that's the word for nature in Hebrew, amounts to God. Elohim is the word for God in Hebrew, as they have the same numerical value of 86. Now,
Just hold on just a second. Also,
yep.
yeah, let's open that up for 1 second and explain that the language of Kabbalah, the language of the Torah, it's many layers. It's not just a story. There was a Adam and Eve in a garden, and the snake talked to them. That's a very simple one layer. There's the numerical layer. There's like many layers to everything. So when a word, maybe you want to just discuss for a second
No,
what that
just to
means.
to,
So
to,
that
to complete what you started exactly. The words in which the Kabbalistic texts are written, they're not words. They're not just words. Let's say it's a coded language. One of the aspects of that is that there's also a numerical value to the Hebrew language, and Baal HaSulam mentions it here. He doesn't go into a lot of detail about it, but this is called gematria. Essentially, behind the Hebrew words and the Hebrew letters, there's like a mathematical structure that describes the content of a certain word. And the word for hateva, nature in Hebrew, the word for God, Elohim in Hebrew, they have the same numerical value, which means they have the same content from a spiritual perspective. They have they mean they're referring to the same thing. So I'll just complete the quote. So he says, therefore, or thus, I can refer to the laws of nature as the laws of God, and vice versa, for they are one and the same. So this, I think, is like if we want to figure out who God is, at least from Kabbalah's point of view, which is what we're here to do, first of all, let's not detach whatever we think about this idea of God, this entity, character, whatever. Let's not detach our interpretation of God from nature, the natural system, the laws of nature, and everything that's happening in nature. And clearly, humanity, society, countries, people, armies, and so forth, they're all governed by the same laws of nature. Now, if you told that to a person who's, let's say, a physicist or a scientist, they would agree that we're all governed by laws of nature. When you call it God, that's where, the confusion comes.
Well, because God
So,
means that there's some kind of plan. That's
okay.
usually some kind of.
So here's
That's
something,
people...
right? But that's a great point, important point that Baal HaSulam relates to in the article, in the same article. I do have that quote, but maybe we can just riff on it a little bit. If you want the text, tell me. I can pick it up in a sec, pull it up in a second. But does it matter? Baal HaSulam asks. Does it matter? That's really meaning.
Does it matter what we call him, you mean?
If you understand there are laws of nature that we all have to follow, you fall from the 10th floor, you're going to hit the ground. It's going to hurt. It doesn't matter how hard you pray. It doesn't matter how good of a person you are. If someone pushes you from the 10th floor, you will fall, you will die, unless someone catches you. Someone like a Superman comes to catch you, right? In that very rigid, relentless, uncompromising way, there is a system of laws that governs everything we do. Now, whether you understand, think, feel, believe that there's a goal to it, that there's a purpose to it, or not, doesn't matter when it comes to your necessity to practice caution with the laws of nature. That's a very important point that Kabbalists are Baal HaSulam at least really labors on communicating that. You don't have to be certain that there's some higher goal even. Of course, he says, as a Kabbalist, I research this higher goal and I see it happening, unfolding through the laws of nature. But even if you just agree that there are laws of nature and you have to follow them, otherwise you will be punished by these laws of nature, that is a good enough common denominator, a good enough place for us to start agreeing on what we need to do. We have to study the laws of nature and how they relate not just to atoms, molecules, animals, biological life, climatology. We have to find what the laws of nature are when it comes to us, human beings, and our relationships, and what's going on between our armies, our leaders, our countries, our world. And as long as we don't do, until we do that, it's not going to be a pretty sight. Yeah.
So when a person is praying then to God,
yeah,
let's just break that down for a minute, right? Because everyone's praying who's in a war, right? So what is it? What is actually happening? So like, common person thinks like I'm praying to God, and if I squint my eyes hard enough and like do a good enough prayer, then God will change the laws of nature and miraculously save me.
Right.
Like if I pray enough, like God will favor me. The God who created all of the planets and the infinite solar system, it's really kind of insane actually to think about that. There's a huge infinite solar universe, right? Lots of things that God's got to do. He's got to take care of stuff everywhere. But me, this tiny person, if you go up 10,000 feet, you can't even look like an ant. But if I do a good enough job praying, I'm going to convince him, and then he's going to come help me.
Right.
It's almost like it doesn't have morals.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you were in the middle of a sentence. Say it again.
I said it sounds like he doesn't have morals.
Huh.
Like if I'm a good person, why would it? So it's almost like it's like this kind of blind chopping down of bodies, because we relate our lives to what we experience through our body. That becomes the most important thing to us. We can't separate from that, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to lose that. So we have like this special attitude towards the one or this thing that has control over whether or not I'm alive or dead. So if all of a sudden I'm chosen or whatever to be killed, to die, I didn't necessarily agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So then there needs to, so I'm like, all of a sudden I'm kind of I'm encountering this attitude towards the thing that has control over my life or death, but it seems like it doesn't really care about me.
Well, you know, what Seth said a moment ago about how we think of prayer as this expectation that everything will change for me. But if you are investigating nature like a scientist, then what you're trying to find is laws. And the laws of nature are immutable, unchangeable, immovable, uncompromising. So there's no such thing as prayer in the sense that I will ask and something about these laws of nature will change. Not going to
The
happen.
laws of
Not going to happen.
because
Laws
God
of
is
nature.
nature.
If you understand that, if you look at God as that, then you understand God is whatever system of laws we are in. We cannot do anything to change it, but we can maybe do something to change ourselves. And that is the big it's an upside down world when you say prayer from a Kabbalistic perspective versus the ordinary person's or a religious person's perspective. I don't know who believes what or prays in what way, but if you're praying for something to happen that doesn't involve your own transformation, you're not praying from a Kabbalistic perspective. Also, the word in Hebrew says exactly that. Tfilah, lehitpalel, that's the verb. It comes from what it means essentially. It means to judge yourself. So for a Kabbalist, praying is not at all just asking for something to change for me. Praying is actually an inner work of examining what you really, really want and intend to get out of life, and finding where you are in relationship to that unchanging system of laws and where it wants to take you, where
So
what
there's a few
is
things that
its goal. Yeah.
first of all, in order to do any of this, first of all, we need to understand. Okay, so there are immutable laws of nature.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yes.
one premise. The next premise is all of this praying that we have to do. It's not that I'm going to bend those laws. Like God, in His
Yeah.
infinite wisdom, made those
Exactly.
laws, but I think it would be better if He would just bend that one a little bit for
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
benefit today. And right, so the prayer. So there's these laws. We need to study. We need to understand what they are.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, how do I lehit palel? How do I pray like properly? Meaning, how do I change myself to be in
Yes.
line with those laws?
Exactly.
Okay. So,
Yes.
okay, that's
Yeah, yo,
X.
you
We
said
got
it. You
that.
said it beautifully. It's how do I praying means from a Kabbalistic point of view. How do I self calibrate? How do it's working on your own heart, intention, desire, purpose in life in relation to those laws of nature that won't change. That's the night and day difference between the Kabbalah's interpretation of prayer and the
So
common person.
Maybe
Yeah.
hey, go ahead, Chris. You're saying something?
no. Remember that for a second. I was just saying maybe you should find that quote then about the necessity to adhere to the laws of nature, or what I can't remember what exactly the quote from Baal HaSulam. But it's almost that's very very relevant. It's like he's describing
Oh,
he's
so
answering the question a little bit.
hmm yeah. Seth, what were
You're looking
you?
for it?
I can
Yeah.
find it
So
in a second.
so
Yeah.
So, everyone needs to, okay, this is great. This is totally sublime, and everyone's probably having a lot of aha moments right now about this whole thing. But let's put boots back on the ground for a second.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
go
yeah.
back up. We'll go back to spirituality in a minute, but let's put boots on the ground that,
So why is
Hamas
the
is
war?
chanting, yeah,
Why the
Allah,
war? Basically. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hamas is chanting Allahu Akbar, and the Israeli soldiers are chanting to Hashem that he should, he's the king. And the funny thing is, funny, not funny, they're both from Abraham. Like they both have the same root, even.
Yeah.
So it's not like
Ooh, that's a
we're
deep
fighting
thing.
against like another family,
Mhm.
like another clan from across the river. It's like the same. We both have the same dad, and then the fighting's going
Ultimately.
on. So
Yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
now that we see that piece of boots on the ground, horrible. We talked about millions of people dying before, and then we're in a terrible situation now that the whole world is in. Now we have that. Okay, that's boots on the ground. And now let's go back to what we talked about 5 minutes ago
Hmm.
of of what is that system and how do we calibrate ourselves to that system, and what what I want to see how we can get to here is that the enemy just goes away. It's not even of course, if someone's killing you, you have to fight a military war and all those things, but let's talk about the special thing that the wisdom of Kabbalah brings here. What
Yeah.
are we going to convince every Hamas guy that our God is right and their God is wrong? Like that's not happening, right? Are we going to go around
Mm.
the world and sit down and
Uh-huh.
talk to every single person who has other beliefs about whose God is better and which
Right.
God is the best
Right.
God? Well, you had a great God for all these generations, but let me tell you about my God, and this is actually the real God. I mean, come on, guys,
That's
like
such like
Yeah.
that you're being really sarcastic, except it's so accurate. It's so accurate. Especially it's what you see on the mainstream media, all the Ben Shapiro's of the world and all of the who knows, whatever else is. That's like they feel a calling to do this explanation, but the explanation just gives you like more of like an echo chamber to place yourself into, justify that you're right. And we talked about right and wrong before in the other shows, but it's clearly, like Seth said, it's clearly that's not going to happen, right? There's not going to be convincing of anything to anybody, but it's still something that we like doing. It
that's what
may feel
most of the
good. We're
dialogue is about, is like convincing
Yeah.
everyone whose God
Yeah.
is better.
That's the point. That's the point. Most of the dialogue, most of what is happening is I mean, basically, you have a physical war happening in a very small place, and then you have the world fighting about who's right and who's wrong, and trying to just, kind of like convince. Are they even trying to convince
They
each other?
don't tell the
I don't know.
civilians before they kill them. We do tell the civilians
Yeah, and
before
then
we
you say
kill
no,
them.
but can't you see that this is what's true? Can't you see that this is? Can't you see that our intentions are good? Can't you see that their intentions is bad? Can't you see that they're doing? Can't you see they started? Who started? Now, if we zoom out like we did a few minutes ago, if we zoom out, we see that everyone is governed by one thing, whether they like it or not, and that is laws of nature. That's why Baal HaSulam is so poignant. It's so sharp about this in this
strict. Yeah.
article about peace. He says, look, it doesn't matter what you believe. You are a creature governed by laws you did not invent. We did not create the universe, right? We did not even choose to be born. We did not decide how our nature works. We did not decide also where nature is pushing us and how it's evolving us. So let's study it, let's understand it, and then maybe we can start moving towards peace.
Well, that's the
So
problem. You can say study and
yeah.
understand, but there's no one to talk to. There's like, if I want to study and understand something, I go
Yeah.
to the expert
Well,
doctor and ask him all the
I
questions.
guess you have to start with those who have an ear. You have to start somewhere. Those who can somewhat listen. Anyway, I got that quote. It's a
Yeah.
bit long. It's a bit long. I mean, not super long. 4 paragraphs, 4 short paragraphs, 4 or 5.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if we
Use your
need if
discretion.
we need all of it.
Just that one piece was
Um,
good too. Also,
Um,
Unless you think it doesn't flow well.
okay, maybe let's just do the beginning of it, and then we'll skip a little bit and go to the end of it. Can you see now? Yeah, I think you can see. So check this out.
Yeah.
So he says there, he says this, and look, this is from the beginning of from the middle of the article there. So it's not possible right now in our limited time to cover the entire context, but but it does. So I'll add a little bit, in between to kind of
Here and
add
there.
context. Yeah.
All
So
right.
it says this in general. So God, from our perspective, is laws of nature. That entire system, all of the system, all the laws of nature together, they form a certain program. That all-inclusive program is what you can call God. Ooh, actually, I have another really good quote about that. Can we will we have time?
Bring it.
Check it. Okay, this is something. This is from
Yes,
this.
I'm
yes.
interested in just the
This is
best
Okay,
content
okay,
at the
okay.
best time.
Check it
so
out.
if you have,
No, because
yeah.
I mean, we're talking about God this whole show and the definition of God. Here's another very direct, sublime, though deep, very profound definition of God from a different place, not from the Peace article. This is from the study of the Ten Sfirot, which is, for those who don't know, a couple thousands of pages worth of composition where Baal HaSulam breaks down the detailed structure of the hidden part of the laws of nature that we don't see. You
It's based on the Ari's tree of life,
Yes,
and he
which,
just
which
opens
was
all.
written 500 years before him. So we just, we can't even conceive of really what the development of the wisdom of Kabbalah is throughout a few thousand years, and what those spiritual attainments, how scientific this spiritual science is. It's just miraculous if you really zoom out and see what Kabbalists have done, the big milestones in the development of Kabbalah, and how they happened throughout a few thousand years, and the language that was formed, and the codes that was anyway. It's too much to do in very little time. Sorry. So he
We
says
should
this.
cover all of the piece at one point. We should just do a whole series of the piece, probably, if we're already talking
Maybe.
about it.
I mean, as long as this war continues, it's very relevant. So that
We'll
might
have
be.
time.
We could think about it, and maybe our friends in the chat can say what they think about it too, give us some ideas, and hopefully I'll be available to join the show.
Right. Stand by. TBD.
So yeah, let's see. What? By the way, Chris, if I'm gonna be able to do the show from there, I'm definitely not gonna be able to broadcast it. So look into
Oh,
that.
I'm gonna have to
Look
figure
into
that
that.
out. All right.
All right. So from that to God. So Baal HaSulam says this: godliness is simple light that contains all the multitude of forms and opposite forms in the world within his utter unity, which is the secret of one unique and unified. Now, very short, but endlessly profound. So essentially, when we say God, we are talking about everything that is, was, and will happen, based on in all its different forms, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the beautiful. Everything is included in something Kabbalists refer to as one unique and unified. It's above time, it's above space, it is like a single thought that encompasses everything that can exist. And that's that includes within it all the laws of nature. What we identify with our five senses and our scientific experiments is just a fraction of the laws of nature.
I feel
Yeah.
I just got a feeling that everybody's like
W-
very just pause here for a second.
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
that
Go ahead.
everybody here is very hot and like warmed up and tuned in. So I just want to try and take an opportunity and say something now, and
Yeah.
everybody let's see if this can sink in. There's a perfect reality. Okay, we're not talking just about something physical, but there's a perfect reality, and then there's us, who is a perceiving creature. Okay, between the perfect reality and us, we perceive a war, we perceive wars, we perceive problems, we perceive all of that. All of the reality that we perceive is the what's the word? It's the trans it's the
like the
distance.
yeah, like the
It
contrast or the
it's the
contrast or the
algorithm, whatever it
yeah.
is between us. It's the system between us and that perfect reality. So when our calibration is in the same wavelength as the calibration of that perfect reality, then in between us, we don't see and feel the wars. Okay, so what I want everyone to just try and feel for a second before we get back into the text is that what we're seeing as problems and wars, what that is it's our dissimilarity from that perfect system.
I
It's a
would
measure
it's a
of the dis.
it's inspiring what you're saying. It's really inspiring. The like putting it into a formula is inspiring. This is something that I would even say, if you want to put it into a formula, I would say what we see in front of our eyes today, right now, inside time and space, inside our broken perception, is the the perfect reality minus our current state of shattering plus an x, a variable, which is our free choice. It's like we're always looking what we see around us, what we the reality, the war, everything. We're looking at our, like you said, our lack of correction, what we're still missing, our lack of calibration towards that perfect state of peace, and it's like compounded by or mediated by something called free choice, which is an area where we can influence, do
Let me
something.
let me
Anyway,
read let me
okay,
read this
yeah.
more of a Shemish quote one more time, and
Oh
then
yeah, go for it.
it's very short. He says the primary. I'm going to kind of shorten it a little bit. The primary shield against calamity is love and unity.
Hmm.
When love and unity prevail among the people, and they abstain from harming one another, calamity finds no foothold.
Hmm.
So there is no such thing that there's just war and problems for no reason. All of the war and the problems are specifically measurements, like on your dashboard of your car. All the problems are just measurements of how out of balance, out of harmony, synchronization we are with the perfect system.
Yeah.
So are we
Whew.
saying that our this dissimilarity, which is great, because it shows you that it's like it's like it puts you in kind of like a binary point of view, like dissimilarity of 0 and 1. It's just one, and that's it, right? It's just one change. So I think we should also define, and I'm sure that we're going to get there. What's the one change that needs to happen? Because if we're
Right.
dissimilarity, what makes us similar? And okay, so yeah, we can get to that. But you've probably been holding on to this bit of wanting to say a quote for a really long time.
Okay, let's do
Say it
it.
already.
Let's do it.
I'm
Okay,
just
here it
building the
is.
tension.
So here it is. So he says in like a peak moment in the article, he says this. In general, he really tries to like boil down what do we need to do? What's the main thing this system of laws called God wants from us human beings? So he says this. In general examination, we find that there are only two laws to follow in society. These can be called 1. Reception and 2. Bestowal. This means that each member must by nature receive his needs from society and must benefit society through his work for its well-being. And if one breaks one of these commandments, he will be mercilessly punished. Let's just linger on this for a second, not for long. Just basically, he says, look, it's simple. Human beings are like a network. Each node is a person. Every person can only do two things, ultimately receive or give. Very simple. Receive. Now, this is not just talking about, don't think about receiving and giving as like, a thing. You give something, you receive something. These
Like
are,
economics or
yeah,
something.
exactly. We're talking about spiritual nature of the action, meaning the intentions behind our actions. There is reception and bestowal that's going on between the hearts of human beings. Now, I'll skip a little bit. Basically, he says here that with reception, there's no problem. We were designed in a nature of self-reception. So that intention, this first law of nature, the law of reception, there's no problem with that because we are instinctively, inherently designed with that intention in mind.
And that's not what needs to be corrected.
It's not what's there's no problem with that. We immediately also feel directly and immediately that we need to receive. We don't directly immediately feel that we need to bestow upon the whole system, that we need to connect to and love that whole system, that we need to generate and radiate an intention of bestowal towards the network. We don't feel that. That's where the problem is. That's where the problem is. So let's see what he writes here. So we need not excessively examine the commandment of reception. By the way, again, commandment, law, God's laws, nature's mitzvot, the commandments of nature, the laws of God, it's all interchangeable in Kabbalah. That's what he just mentioned to us before that. God equals nature, 86, laws of nature, laws of God, same thing. Commandments, mitzvot, it's all laws of nature. We need not excessively examine the commandment of reception, since the punishment is carried out immediately, which prevents any neglect, like we just said. But in the other commandment, that of bestowal upon society, not only is the punishment not immediate, but it is given indirectly. Therefore, this law is not properly observed. And that's the whole problem. And no treaties or law or political laws, agreements, economic collaborations, none of that will work if we are to achieve true peace. We need to calibrate our intentions to bestow upon society across all of mankind, and that's the only thing that will bring peace. But as long as it's not properly observed, he says this: thus humanity is being fried in heinous turmoil, and strife and famine and their consequences have not ceased thus far. The wonder about it is that, and so you could say, wait a minute, but didn't we evolve as human beings? Didn't we at least become more civilized, more democratic, And still we are in the 21st century, and still we see horrible atrocities with, that result in a certain group of people, for instance, killing babies, and I don't want to repeat all that horrible atrocities. This is the 21st century. How is this still happening? The wonder about it is that nature, like a skillful judge, meaning the program of nature, it evolves us. And every step of the way, humanity has to correct itself, calibrate itself on a new level, on a deeper level. So like a skillful judge, it punishes us according to our development. For we can see that to the extent that humankind develops, the pains and torments obtaining our sustenance and existence also multiply. Let's just read it to the end and give Baal HaSulam the room here. Thus you have a scientific, empirical basis that his providence, and again, his providence, don't interpret it religiously. He's talking about the program that contains all the laws of nature and where it's going, where it's taking us. The evolutionary plan. That his providence has commanded us to observe with all our might the mitzvah or the law of bestowal upon others in utter precision, in such a way that no member from among us would work any less than the measure required to secure the happiness of society and its success. And as long as we are idle, performing it to the fullest, nature will not stop punishing us and take its revenge. Look how decisively Baal HaSulam writes. We need to understand that nature, where we are, God, if you want, is a system of laws. The only thing that can change is our attitude to it. It's not going to change. And if we act against it, we will find ourselves in another war and more suffering and so forth.
And
yeah.
Okay. I'll wrap it up at the end.
Okay. So last paragraph here. And besides the blows we suffer today, we must also consider the drawn sword for the future. The right conclusion must be drawn that nature will ultimately defeat us, and we will all be compelled to join hands in following its mitzvot, its laws, with all the measure required of us. In other words, love between human beings, bestowal in human society, this intention to love each other, is not just a fairy tale we tell to our children. It is becoming the absolute necessity for human beings to survive on this planet. And that's where we're going.
That just takes you from like what I thought. Maybe if I came to this show and I thought Kabbalah was something, or I thought, I don't know, loving others was something, or maybe it was like kumbaya and all this stuff. It
Yeah.
takes you from kumbaya land to
Yeah.
I'm a scientist in a lab, and I've got to figure out how to do this thing called bestowal of love. I've got to figure out a way how to do that. It's like two different, completely different approaches. I have no choice. Nature's forcing me to do it versus it sounds like it'd be nice and fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Seth, how are you going to wrap this up?
I think you guys you wrapped it up. You guys wrapped it up, and I got lost in my thoughts about it. All right, so wow, I really got lost in my thoughts about it.
Can you read the? Yeah, go ahead. I wanted to hear the Malva Shemesh quote again. We're doing a bunch of sources today, and I find it strengthening and inspiring.
The short of it is, everyone, that whatever we're doing in our normal world, whatever we have to do, Asaf is being called up to the military tomorrow. Like whatever we have to do in the world is what we have to do in the world. But every single one of us, we calibrate our inner selves to this system. And all of the problems, think about all of the crap in the world, all of this, it's not going to stop. And we're not going to, like you said, we're going to be fried in this. Nature is going to relentlessly fry us in this. There's no way out until we calibrate ourselves to this love, to this good connection between us. We have friends here from covering the whole world.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat too. Beautiful.
Just look, everybody. The entire world is represented here. There's a network. Our thoughts and our hearts, our intentions. Let's now aim ourselves together. You think it's silly, you think it doesn't do anything, but try all of us aim ourselves that we want this to happen. And this is calibrating ourselves to the force that gives life. We want everything to be love and good. So there is a force that animates every plant, that animates every animal, that lights all the stars. There's a bestowing force. We want as much as we can from our small state that we're in now to try and become similar to that same force by making ourselves also in that same way. And then we'll see that the wars will calm down and the world outside of us will also change. And it won't have to happen through nuclear bombs, but will actually, to quote another Kabbalist in Psalms, he says that we'll be like dreamers. We'll wake up and we'll realize this whole thing was a dream, and we'll enter into a totally new, fresh, loving, fulfilled, and whole reality.
Amen.
We are all looking forward to peace for everyone, for good connections for everyone. Asaf, we hope that you get a call tomorrow, that you don't need to go, that everything is calmed down. We'll update everyone on what's going to be.
Either way, we'll see Asaf next week. No problem. It'll be all right. It'll be good.
I would say we'll figure it out, and everyone watching, stay tuned to just the YouTube, stream and see if we can do the show or not. We'll definitely try.
Okay. So we plan to see everybody 2 p.m. Eastern, New York time next week. Big hug. We're hugging you all. Bye, everyone.
When we're lost in the dark and two cages we are bound, and the key to the lock so the heart can't be found. gonna rise together. There's a voice deep inside and it's calling us here to the place way above every doubt, every fear. You teach us how to hear and teach us how to feel and show us how to melt in the flames of your love. Through every face, every voice, every breath, a gift from above. You're the key to open up the heart. You're the song that takes us through the dark. You're the seal that binds every part. And we're gonna rise together to a vision of your love. And we're gonna rise together. Teach us how to hear and teach us how to feel and show us how to melt in the flames of your love. Through every face, every voice, every breath, a gift from above.